Welcome to Bat Therapy, psychology of Batman, superheroes, and other comic book characters. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We are your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources. Yay! We're doing a character I love today.
Yes, we are. And so, not gonna lie, I was hesitant because I wasn't sure if there was a really good story that was like all about her, and you absolutely nailed it.
I know. I didn't know this was out here. So I love Orphan, Cassandra Cain, because there are 5 million Cains in the Batman universe.
Yeah, they had to name them after Bob Kane. It's like, oh, we got to just keep naming them after the guy that made Batman.
But there are 0 fingers that I'm aware of.
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the
situations.
Yes.
So yes, I love Cassandra Cain. You're right though. So I just happened upon her in a variety of different Batman plots and comics.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my favorite renditions of her is when she poked around in Bruce Wayne Murderer, Bruce Wayne Fugitive was a storyline that happened. Mm-hmm. And it is hard to find stuff that focuses on her, but we found Shadow of the Batgirl, which is I think a newer, essentially side story that someone created who loved her character and connected with her character and was like, I want to. Sarah Kuhn, yes, thank you.
Yes,
and essentially took all of the pieces that you have out there and pulled together a full story, which was really nice. It feels very young adult to me in terms of its vibe, but it's cute, it's interesting, it's a quick read. It's definitely interesting. So if you don't know about this character and you want to learn real quick before you listen, Shadow of the Batgirl it's a quick read for sure.
It is, and they do some things different that I like. So Cassandra Cain, her origin story is her father is both of her parents are super villains. Both of them are so
take that, Damien.
Villains.
You only have one super villain parent.
right. So whatever. But anyway. But yeah, and so she has parents, and she decides, she's like, all right, I'm not going to do this. She was raised as a killer. Not only was she trained as an assassin, because apparently that's just the cool thing to do with your kids. Like it's such a recurring theme in comics. Child assassins is like the Montessori school of comic books. It's just so like, true. Oh yeah. It's just like, oh well, you know what he could be. Like you take him for the 18-month checkup. The doctor's like, "Oh man, y'all have a little killer on your hands." Like, we got to get him into that. Let's call Talia. Let's see.
You're always worried that your kid's behind on development, and it's a kill or be killed in that scenario.
There you go.
Yeah. So mother is Lady Shiva, and then I always forget her dad's
David
name. David Cain. So David Cain is her dad.
Runs a crime syndicate, and so
and Lady Shiva is one of the most badass characters in the Batman realm. I mean, she's really high up there in terms of fighter skills.
Yeah, and so Orphan is she's one of the best. She's one of the best. Yeah, and so Cassandra's very interesting because not only was she trained as an assassin, her dad also, like, the way they trained her, she couldn't talk.
Yes.
She couldn't talk. And so this story, one of the big things that changes they made was that she definitely does talk in this story. Although over time with canon, Over time, she does end up learning to talk. It's one of those things that kind of varies by writer, where she's learning little by little. Clayface in Detective Comics, when Clayface becomes good, when Basil becomes good, he actually teaches her Shakespeare. Uh
Aw, I haven't read
yeah,
that one. That's so
yeah,
cute.
it's really cool. Clayface, yeah.
So I actually, one of my main hiccups with this storyline is I believe that she learned to talk far too quickly. She was able to pick up she was able to understand before she was able to speak, which made sense. But yeah,
Yes.
she was able to communicate through spoken language
Mhm.
way more quickly and more effectively in this storyline compared to any of the other ones I had read.
Yes, they do make some changes to this. And the thing is, and so one of the big changes, one of the biggest changes that I thought was interesting was the focus of this story, which I love, was between her and Barbara.
I know.
Batman was not a part of this story. And one thing that's really interesting about that is, and this is absolutely canon and so badass, but Batman has admitted if he had to fight with Cassandra one on one, he would lose. Like, she is the top.
She's
She's the
so
top.
cool.
Yeah, she's
I
really
love
cool.
her.
Yeah, she's really cool. And so, yeah, she came in as Orphan, and then she became one of two Batgirls. There was actually a comic called Batgirls that
Oh.
was all about Stephanie Brown and Cassandra
Mm.
Cain working under Oracle.
Ah,
So
gotcha,
after
gotcha.
yeah, and so also a very cool
Yeah.
comic. That was very
So
cool.
yeah, what I actually really loved about this comic, and I was thinking that that was different as well, because usually I've known storylines where she was more connected to Batman and working under him, but I wasn't as familiar with the Batgirls stuff. But yeah, it is really cool because she meets Barbara. She also meets another woman who takes her under her wing, essentially like invites her into her restaurant so
Jackie,
she can meet
yes.
Jackie. Yeah, turns out to be a badass herself,
Hmm.
of course, because there are hidden badasses all across comics. But I thought it was really cool that you get these little hints that Barbara's at that stage where she's creating Oracle, and she talks about this technology that
Yeah.
she's going to call Oracle, that she's about. So they cross
We're
paths with
two
each other.
heroes in training in this.
Two heroes in training, yeah, because Barbara, obviously she had trained once, but now she's in a wheelchair and she is trying to figure out her identity as a hero now. And so it was really cool to see those little snippets of Barbara becoming her next stage as Oracle, while Cassandra is, so essentially she ends up not killing someone for her dad, and she goes, "Well, whoa,
I
that's not
screwed
good.
up.
I screwed up," and then
But
she
at the same
pieces out.
time, she's also glad that she didn't. Like, and
Yes.
that's one thing. One of the things that's very interesting about her is I love that she made this decision, but it doesn't seem like it was ever a mistake. Like, a lot of the
Agreed.
times, whenever
Yeah.
something like that happens, it's like, I don't know what happened. I just didn't kill him. I was supposed to. But with this, she was just like, he said something, it hit a nerve, she walked away.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where, of course, she thought about it after the fact, but at the same time, it was very cool. And it gets pointed out in the comment. She recognized that something was wrong and
Yeah.
she made the choice to change it. And it's like,
Yes.
okay, she straight up says, like, I don't know what being a hero is, but I know I don't want to be this.
Yeah. So here's what's so interesting about her. So, okay, the daughter of two assassins, super villainy people, trained by one of them. I don't think she ever met her mom.
Right.
And so her father trains her to be a killing machine for him. He literally neglects her in the speech development, doesn't allow her to
What a
talk.
bastard.
I know. So he essentially he wants her to have one primary course, and that is to do his bidding to kill people. and so limiting her in all these other areas. And so what I personally find so psychologically fascinating about this character is that so her speech development is horribly behind. She is essentially mute. But what's really cool about her character is that they essentially talk about how fighting became her language. Fighting, movement, people's body language. She can read people in such a way that it's as if they are talking to her. And so it's part of her story of being such a superior fighter. And even some storylines when she starts learning to talk, her fighting suffers and then she has to sort her way through that. And it's just like a beautiful representation of the double-edged swords that come up in life, right? Where you gain one
Yeah.
thing, you lose another. But it's so yeah, so here she is. Now, granted, she's around other people, so she kind of picks up on things here and there, but he's been very purposeful to try and make sure that she does not have what she needs to develop speech. And so
Yes.
she only catches things here and there, but she catches enough in this one scenario to realize, "Ooh, this is wrong."
Right.
And she, like you said, she chooses to step away. And then she, in this story, she's living on the streets. She doesn't have a
Hmm.
home. Through the kindness of strangers and happenstance, she finds people who help her along her way,
She
and
hit the lottery.
she hit
Oh
the
my
lottery.
gosh.
She did.
It's the most
um
unrealistic thing about this.
well, so she ends up being able to like stay in a little alcove of a library, and then Barbara Gordon happens to be doing like a story creation thing with kids in that library and is talking about Batgirl, and then she's like, "I want to be like this Batgirl." So, yeah, there's some luck in there. I will give you that. But it's so her way of communicating is so unique.
Yes.
It's just it's very interesting and intriguing, and she, I don't know, personally I connect to her character, I feel like, in a special way because of the special way that she communicates. And I don't know, I'm drawn toward her because of how she communicates, how she interacts. It's just so uniquely her.
And one of the things that's also interesting with this as well is in this particular comic, it seems like it's almost at times either more of a language barrier or
Mm,
choice versus in a lot of the other ones, it's completely neurological.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
completely neurological. And this is what's so interesting about this that I really, really love. And I was going to ask you
Mm,
about this is so when in this comic when Cassandra starts interacting with people and it's like fine, I'll answer in one word sentences or I'll answer in a
mhm.
couple sentences here and there. One of the things that Barbara does that just irks Cassandra is she asks her so many questions, and
Oh god,
Barbara
that was
means
hysterical.
yes, and
Yeah.
Barbara means she means well, bless her heart, she absolutely means well. I love Barbara Gordon so much in this comic. She absolutely means well, but it is driving Cassandra up the wall because
Yep.
she's like, I'm trying to get my life together, but I don't want to talk about myself. I don't want to tell you anything at all.
Yep.
And I immediately thought about a therapist.
Mm.
I immediately thought about a therapist because I'm like, okay, this is literally what they have to do. They have to get people to talk that will literally come there, sit down, and not want to talk. Uh, and that's a superpower.
Why,
that's a
thank you.
that's a
Um,
superpower right there.
what's interesting is that you get a whole range. So you can have people that say very little or um are very or might be very guarded. And saying very little doesn't necessarily mean that you're guarded. Those can overlap, but they can also be different. You can also have people who are like super talkative and really interactive, and either extreme can be tough. So you can say very little and it counts a lot, and you can say a lot and there's very little in there. So it's not just about the amount, but what's being said and how and paying attention to that person and their style and what's going on. But yeah, you do. So there's a balance. So different therapists are going to have different things that they're naturally good at, and also you want to be able to flex yourself and adjust a bit to the person in front of you,
Right.
because yeah, when it I too really enjoyed how Barbara was like, oh my god, what about this and this, oh, and what about this, and you can just see Cassandra shrinking away
Yep.
in like a panic. She's like
You're doing that
deteriorating
thing
before
again.
Barbara's eyes. And
Doing
then
that
Barbara's
thing
like,
again.
"Oh no, I'm so sorry." I love it. I love it. It's so great because and these things can happen. It's not that Cassandra doesn't want to connect. It's that there are all these factors going into it where something that seems as basic, like a question, can actually take a lot. So for some
Yeah.
people it's because of anxiety, for some people it's because of they're just feeling some very heightened things. Maybe they're super tired and exhausted and overwhelmed. Or you had a great point here. So a lot of times with Cassandra, she has some neurological things, or she has just her brain works differently. And so if a person's brain works differently or they communicate differently, then it's helpful to be mindful about how you approach someone with those questions. So Barbara caught on pretty quick, um, that, okay, the way I ask questions is actually getting me the opposite reaction that I'm going for. And she, to her credit, she does try to adjust. She tries to slow it down. She pays attention, and she's gets fairly good at catching herself when she's like shooting all those questions over at Cassandra all at once. But yeah, it can be difficult. You actually have to to be kind of like Cassandra in some ways as a therapist, because you cannot just pay attention to what people tell you. You also have to pay attention to how they tell you and what else is going
The
on.
body language.
The body language is so important. So we talked about Tim. He's the Robin that would be a great therapist. Granted, Cassandra might struggle with some of the language stuff, and she's still learning about the world in a way where learning some more would be helpful, but the body
Right.
language piece, she'd nail that part of being a therapist.
And Barbara immediately notices it and she's like,
Yeah,
this is a superpower. Like what
it's
you're
so
able to
cool.
do, the way you're able to figure things out just based on their body language and their subtle changes and things that they do. And one of the things that also stuck out to me, because I feel like this is something that happens in real life all the time, where the one person you're trying not to talk to
Ah,
is the perfect person to help you. Because throughout
yep.
this whole thing, she's like, I don't have time to talk to you, Barbara. I need to figure out what
Mm-hmm.
happened to Batgirl. I don't. And Barbara, of course, is asking her a million questions, and she's like, really? You're looking for Batgirl? Well, tell me why. She's like, nope, nope. You're too many interrogative sentences. I'm gone. I'm out. I'm out. And Barbara's like, I'm sorry, but like, I'm pretty sure I can help you with this Batgirl thing. so it's so good. This was such a fun comic, and I'm glad that it stayed fun. It did have its serious moments, and but it was very wholesome. It wasn't.
Yeah,
This was the happiest Gotham I've ever seen. I'm not gonna
right.
lie. This
And
Gotham,
there's
the sun
even
was up. Like,
Cassandra, even like, I mean, she's connecting with multiple people. She gets a sort of mothering kind of thing. She gets some friendship stuff. She even gets a love interest. It's so cute just watching her like freak out about what to do with that.
and oh my gosh, and the dichotomy of her love interest is so good because so many times we always talk about how, oh wow, there's so many situations in comic books that can relate to real life
Mm,
situations. And in this one, there's literally a dichotomy because
yep.
Cassandra is like, I know what I was trained to do, I know what my father wants me to do, and I don't want to do it. And her love interest in this, he is an aspiring writer but
Yeah.
his dad is really just hovering over him because he wants him to be a quarterback and he wants him to be good at football, and he is good at football, but that's not what makes him happy. And I love that they literally took the same story and
Yeah.
it was like comic book world
Yep.
and real life.
Here, let's play it out for you so you can see what we're
It
trying to
was on the
get at
nose,
here.
wasn't it? It was on the nose, and
Yeah.
sometimes on the nose
Sometimes
is
you
okay.
like that. Yeah,
Sometimes on the
sometimes you
nose
like
is
that.
okay.
So here's another thing that I really love about Orphan slash Cassandra Cain actually that you're highlighting for me is I also see her as this very extreme version of the awkward teenage years where obviously there's all this stuff that like plays it up, but she essentially whenever she comes into the comics, she's awkward, she doesn't know how to talk to people. You get this like choppy weird internal dialogue. It's less choppy in this storyline, but
Mm-hmm.
um you get this person who doesn't know how to fit, and it's all brand new, and she doesn't even know how to communicate to people, and it's just awkward in all the right ways. And yeah, I just think it's a just like you were talking about with her love interest. I think it's such a great image and representation of those awkward years where you're trying to figure it out and you just want her so bad to be able to get there, and you're like, you can do it. Like when she dresses up as Batgirl for the first time in the library and she starts getting at the people. I forget, were they leaving their trash around or something? And so
There's
she attacks them as
one
Batgirl.
person, one person's leaving their trash around. She also helps a little girl reach the book that she wanted to
Oh
read.
yeah. Oh, the
Except instead of
cutest
bringing the book down to her, she just puts the girl up on the like on the sixth
I
level of the bookshelf. It's really
freaking
cute.
love Cassandra Cain. Yeah.
Yeah.
And though, I love that about her where there okay. So life can be really hard when you don't fit in the boxes. And so Cassandra Cain would actually, if you like plopped her down in school and you did assessments of her and da da da, she would be identified as having some disabilities and struggles, and she would probably agree that yes, she has some struggles in life. But I think that's a really wonderful example of how when you don't fit in the box, there are just these beautiful ways that you flip the script on life. Because, yeah, instead of grabbing the book and taking it to the kid, she takes the kid to the book. And I love that. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's just something about that is just so great. And she goes about things in a different way. And it's just, yeah, I love it. It's wholesome
Mhm. It, it
somehow.
it really is. And another thing that is very, very interesting about uh Sandra, and honestly with this book, is we're still seeing that same recurring theme that we've seen all this season, where it's like that whole lone wolf thing
Uh,
isn't isn't the best way. It
yep.
it isn't. Everyone needs someone,
Yes.
right? Even I mean, yeah, and this is one of those things that's so good because she's literally running away
Yes.
from these people throughout, and they're just there to love her the
Yep.
whole time.
So you were talking about thinking about a therapist with her and trying to get her to open up and everything. This is making me think of that again, where um when life is hard, especially when we've been hurt by other people, or in some ways we've learned that people are unreliable or untrustworthy in some way, it can be very hard to be around other people. And it can even be triggering in some ways if there's some intense trauma there, which for her, yeah.
Yes.
And she even has times where she's like, I'm reacting to things and I know it's about the past. She's got a lot going on. And so it's actually very natural to try and convince yourself that you do not need or want other people. And a common thread that comes up in therapy is really trying to help people face the fact that yeah, you're saying you don't need or want it. Part of you does though, because you're still here.
Right.
Why would you show up? Why is she in the library? Why is she still even around Barbara, knowing the kind of person Barbara is?
Hmm.
Barbara's not going to shut up. Barbara's
Right.
going to keep asking you questions. She's going to slow herself down where she can, but the girl just can't help it. And so you know who she is, and you're still putting yourself around Barbara. So there's a part of you that, despite all the fight, is needing something from Barbara.
Right.
And fortunately they get to that point where that connection can really grow.
Well, and it's interesting because it seems like even though she's not completely comfortable in
Mm,
those situations where she's been being asked a bunch of questions, she still considers this place and being around Barbara almost like a safety blanket
yep.
kind of thing. It's like, okay, I'm not completely comfortable, but
Yes.
I want you here
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
for when I really need it. Like
Yep.
it's almost, yeah, it's like a home. It's like you're she goes out and about, she's dealing with all this stuff, but she always has a home base.
Yeah.
She
And
always
that's the
has a home base.
and that's the thing that can be really tricky is I love how you just said that, where this is something she really that really matters to Cassandra. She knows there's something there. And so she sticks with it. And it's really uncomfortable and it's really unfamiliar. And we can really struggle with the reality that what can feel like entirely opposing feelings or forces, it can feel like opposites are happening, and that confuses us. It doesn't seem like that should happen. And yet it happens all the time. Things that excite us scare us to death or half to death, things that um things like this that are overwhelming and uncomfortable and unfamiliar can also be something that we desperately want and something that we're drawn toward and makes us feel at home. And yeah, it is nice to see her be able to stick with it and um, yeah, just be that uncomfortable teenager that I mean, I like to think we all were, so I feel better about myself. Maybe not
Right.
everyone was went through
Right.
that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, and it's one of those things where you can definitely see I feel like this is one of those books where everyone is gonna have something to relate to because
Mm,
the same because honestly, I feel like if I could relate to anyone in this, there were times when I feel like I could relate to Cassandra, of
yeah.
course, just wanting to be left alone and not needing the questions. But I've also
Mhm.
definitely been the question asker. I've definitely been the person that's just like, okay, what's going on? How can I help? Well, what about this? Where are you from? Like, I've definitely been that person. And I
Yep.
think it's because there's a lot of the times people feel the need to solve problems. And
Mm, yeah.
and so many times though, it's not that the person needs you to solve their problems. They just need you there.
Yeah.
They just need you
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, there's definitely this thing where when we can tell there's an issue and we care, we want to take action. It makes sense. Because we want things to be different
Right.
for that person or whoever whatever's going on. But sometimes sometimes either there's nothing to be done or we're not necessarily the right person for that role. It's not our role in what's happening, or maybe it's not the right time yet.
Right.
And so yeah, it can be really difficult to be in that place of just sitting with someone, being with someone. And so I really do respect Barbara's attempt to reel herself in, because she is able to reel herself in enough to see that her attempts to connect with Cassandra were creating a wall, and she was able to make it clear that she was trying to better match what Cassandra needed, and took her time. I mean, yeah, for her it was still a little bit of a hyperactive, questioning, inquisitive type of thing, but she definitely slowed her pace down
Hmm.
and tried to meet Cassandra where she was at. But yeah, it is really hard to just sit, and I have to say, even as a therapist, it's incredibly hard when there's something where literally the only thing to do is to allow someone to give themselves permission to just sit with what they're experiencing instead of trying to solve it or figure it out or problem solve it. It can be really hard to do that. And at the same time, it's amazing how much doing that can be healing for a person, even though a part of you is worried, like, I'm not providing what they're here for. They're here for
Yes.
an answer. No, a lot of times, even when in therapy, it's not about an answer. It's just about acknowledging and validating a person being
Yes.
who they are in that moment.
Yes. And that's another reason why I loved the character Jackie so much
Yeah,
in
love
this.
her.
Because one of the things that she said it a couple times in the book, she would just look at Cassandra and just say, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to not be okay. And she was basically saying, look, I'm here to give you food.
Yep.
You can stay here. I'm going to make you as comfortable as I can. And
I'm gonna dress you in all of my clothes.
yes, all my clothes, tell you about my family. Like, she is just such a pillar of support.
Yep.
And it's so good because it's like real life. You can say stuff like that to people and you have no idea how much good it does.
Yeah.
Because on the other side of that, the same way she's like, it's okay to not be okay, Cassandra is dealing with the emotional effects of all of that training she's gone through. The all of it's just coming back to haunt her. And uh I think the line that she says is, the before never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely, like, those two quotes in the book just stood out to me, because when she said the before never goes away, it was one of those things where it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
some of our traumas, it's always going to sit with us. We can
Yeah.
learn to cope with it, we can learn to deal with it, but it's always going to be there. And just like Jackie said, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
That stuff can sit with you, but there's still hope. You can still work through it. And I wanted this comic to be 3 times longer. I wanted to see the progression. Like, she progresses so
mm,
fast. She progresses very fast in this. This
she
is a 3-issue comic.
she did. She progressed really quickly. I would have liked to see it slower. I also think though that it was geared toward a younger audience,
Yes.
and so that pacing might be more purposeful for that audience potentially. But I agree with you, and you actually hit on two snippets that I caught on too. Yeah, so before never really goes away, cannot run forever, and so I liked that combination because um both the fact that our past is our past, there's nothing we can do to change that, and it does affect how we respond, how we react, and also it's not about trying to run from that. Like you were saying, how do we find the way through so we're not just running trying to get away from the before times, because they never go away. And then I also found it interesting. She talked about how she was reacting to things over she was reacting over something that's not even real. So what she meant by that was her past was causing her to react in the present in ways that didn't make sense
Mhm.
to be a reaction in the present if you weren't considering what had happened with her before. And so that's the thing is she was recognizing all these things that she was acting and reacting to that had to do with the past. And that's an important acknowledgement to be able to have so that you can figure your way through that.
Mm.
And then, so the one quote that you didn't say that also stood out to me, because yeah, the it's all right to not be all right. So Barbara actually at one point said something that I really liked too, which was because there's good stuff in the overwhelming stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so I think there's a theme throughout all those quotes, but we've been talking about how Barbara is probably a very overwhelming presence for her. But we're also hitting on, even though there are these things that make her uncomfortable, she's sticking with them. And even though her past is knocking at her door, she's not running away. She's sticking with stuff because she's recognizing, okay, my brain's reacting based on things in the past. It's not fully focused on the present. And so she's able to take in these supports and the fact that, okay, things can be overwhelming and there can also be good in there. And so how do I find a way to be able to get to the point where I can take on the good
Right.
that's in all this overwhelming stuff. Yeah, there are all these like really choice nuggets in there. I'm with you. I would have loved for it to be longer.
Yeah. All three of the main characters. Well, you could say three, you could say four, especially if you include her love interest too.
Mm,
They all go through their own progression because I feel like dealing with Cassandra helps both Barbara and Jackie deal with
yeah.
their things. Jackie sees her young self in Cassandra in a lot of ways. Barbara, seeing Cassandra look up to Batgirl so much, is helping her realize, like, okay, my story and my journey isn't over. Like, I'm gonna
Yes.
figure this out. And they're all just meshing so well
Yeah.
together and just bouncing off of each other. It works so well, and it almost it's one of those things. It doesn't I feel like it doesn't often happen that cleanly in real life,
Yeah.
but we do have circles of friends that we can rely on, and it's like when you're around each other, you just feel better. You just
Yeah.
feel better, and it might not even it's definitely something that's with friendship, but it also seems like it goes a little bit beyond that because there's such a level of emotional support
Mm,
that's there as well, and it takes a lot of trust, right?
yeah.
And so when we're thinking about this when we're thinking about this comic, it's one of those things where you have this idea where it's like, okay, who are my comrades? Who are my
Mm,
brothers and or sisters in arms? Who are the people that I can rely on? And it just this is a very feel good book. This is a very
yeah.
feel good book, and it just makes you,
Filled with assassins.
yeah,
Who knew? In
yeah,
Gotham.
well, yeah. I mean, yeah, it can.
Who would have
There's
thunk?
there's a reason Batman is so great. This world is so great. It's because there are good things in the overwhelming things.
Aw. Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JVS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.